I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for stopping by. At the Bold Business Podcast, we are normalizing important conversations. Yes, there are tips. Yes, there are ways to solve problems. More importantly, are going to be, what do you need for yourself to be able to solve those problems and make the most of the education, the training, and the programs that you are already using. This is a supplement to that. It can sit on top of it, fuel your soul, fuel your mind, and most importantly, regardless of where you're at on your journey, maybe you're starting out, maybe you're ready to scale, maybe you're going through a reinvention. The conversations we are having will help you at each of those stages. So hang around, see what's going on, and I look forward to seeing you engaging with our videos. Andy Lee, the Chief Investment Officer at Parallaxes Capital, is talking with me today on the podcast. We cover a lot of information and go deep into a couple of areas. And I will tell you, when we talk about preparation to have a point of view so you know how you want to show up is incredibly important. Another piece that is really a key takeaway from today's conversation is the difference between first to market and first to scale. And the third thing is we have every day 86,400 seconds in every day, and we all have it, and it is limited to that. And we have the discussion that follows and weaves these three main themes into it is going to be insightful, and most importantly, it highlights the importance of being different. Andy founded Parallaxes Capital in 2017. He was previously with Lone Star Funds, focused on investing in Americas. He began his career at Citigroup. He's been featured in publications like the Wall Street Journal, Capital Allocators, Institutional Investors, NBC Forbes, Reorg, Radio, Fitch Live, and Fitch's LevFin Insights. He has spoken at events and conferences for many organizations as well. I'm excited to have this conversation today that breaks away from some of his typical conversation and goes into what makes his expertise and his company's unique offering in the world successful. Enjoy.
People are the best part of business. Correspondingly, they are also the most challenging part of the business because we each are different individuals, and trying to create standards in order to decrease the amount of variance is something that we are constantly trying to figure out.
Wow! You are listening to the Bold Business Podcast, where you will hear firsthand experiences about what it really takes to ensure market relevance and your company's future.
One of the things, Andy, that has been coming up for me lately is how we actually are versus what we perceive people want us to be. Have you experienced that?
Everyone wants to put individuals into a box. You are my X friend. You are my Y friend. And look, an individual is a lot more than just a single label, and trying to be congruent relative to people's expectations of who you are probably is a very narrow point of view. Ultimately, we are a mother, a son, a daughter, a husband, a wife, a dog dad, among others. And we're all trying to figure out who we are, and that might come with time. And that's something that we're still discovering who we are each and every day, how we react to different situations, and the kind of character that has been instilled into us by our loved ones. And those are things that we are constantly trying to figure out what our true values are, what our core beliefs are, and who we want to be growing up, none of which are congruent at a single point in time, as much as we try to make it. But it's something that we're all constantly in the process of growing up. And I think, to the point of conversation we had before this, if you're not growing, you're dying.
So I got to know, do you know what you want to be when you grow up? Because I don't.
I don't know. I think throughout the early conversation as well, I wanted to be a rap star. Clearly, Mama Lee did not care for that as an answer. Wrong. So I tried my second career, that being an archaeologist. That clearly didn't cut it as being the only son in an Asian family. And here I am shuffling paper in finance as monetizing tax receivables.
And you never know what's going to come next after you've had all of the success doing that, right?
Oftentimes, my friends find it hilarious that I get to bring together the multiple worlds. That being, I'm constantly digging for value. What does an archaeologist do? They're constantly digging in godforsaken places looking for nuggets that might open up a new realm of information and access that they didn't have an understanding of before, or bringing together congruence relative to my goal of being a rap star growing up as a kid. I grew up idolizing Eminem.
I'm an Eminem fan, big Eminem fan.
And so having the opportunity to do what we were talking about, a rap video as a tax professional, is not something that you see each and every day. To my point earlier on, you don't have to have a single identity, and you don't have to hold on to that single identity.
It's true. Someday I might drive a semi-truck. Someday this one has actually passed. I wanted to be a fighter pilot when I was a child.
Why does it have passed?
That's a very good point, because the Air Force actually just did a thing. might be able to fly a drone because they actually just did that. That was a whole big story where the Air Force had their first drone plane and they had pilots in the unmanned, I don't remember if it was an F-16 or not. Feels like it would be their fighter jet. And they simulated in a training fashion in real life dogfight. And it was successful.
Had to fight for the U.S. You could fight for, Ukraine, or you could fight for another country.
That makes sense. And now that you say that, I really don't wish to join the military. I really wish to fly the jet. So you are right.
And there are commercial enterprises that would let you pay them for it, that opportunity.
That's true. That's true. I know. Are you going to go? I'm going to go up to space, or I want to have this unique experience.
My wife and I are in the process of trying to start a family. So she's, until the kids are 18, you're staying home. But until that, you can go live your life.
Oh, you know what? That's true. There's a time and a place for everything. And my son is not 18 yet. So I am in the same boat you are, of you're coming into where I'm at, of I have decided it is important to do certain things to be around and be supportive and be actively involved in my family. So I hear you. That's really good. It sounds like that's one of the values that you and your wife have. It sounds like one of the values that probably precipitates out into your business as well, huh?
Actually, one of the things that I'm writing right now is my obituary. How do you want to be remembered?
Yeah.
And so one of the conversations that we've had is, and this is actually a tradition that we saw in Hawaii not too long ago. In Hawaii, instead of doing a funeral, they do a death party, which I thought was incredible. We were so confused when we saw an entire party going on along the shore, and thereafter they had a boat that left the dock, and they were clearly spraying ashes. But it was probably the loudest and most joyous funeral I have ever seen. And that was for us, that we took away, that we want people to celebrate our lives, that in that moment in this moment of time that we do have with them, we want to have an impact on each and everyone's lives and to not have had regrets. And so one of the things that we have on there is that we were the last one to let go from a hug. Like, if two of us have that same philosophy, we might be hugging for a really long time.
I can never get enough of that. So is that like your love language too? I know it feels like we're all over the place, but we're actually not. Now I'm curious. Have you ever explored love languages? And do you know, is that something that's yours? So that showed up in your obituary work?
Yeah, for sure. I'm not of the love languages that might that be love me, respect me, among others. I think I very much gravitate towards respect me. Sense of touch is definitely something that I would say will probably be a secondary relative to a former writer.
How do you define respect?
Having an understanding that, and this is something that I always tell my team, I want, before we do a meeting, you should know that I would have reviewed every document prior to us engaging in that discussion, because I'm respecting your time, such that when we are on the call, that I'm getting to the decisive points as quickly as possible, versus you reading off a page and briefing me per se. I already have a point of view coming into the discussion, and I'm either verifying what I saw or what I think I learned from the page, or trying to come away with a better source or of information as well as a decision to be made. I think that in my world is a form of respect that I am delivering on a recipient on the other side.
I thought it was awesome. I make the effort, and you saw this, I make the effort to show you how did I prepare so that we can show up right. And there were some things to change to make it accurate, but also to make sure that I was able to be in the same place you were. And you did. You took the time to also put in a moment or two to read through and share some comments so that as we showed up here today to do this recording, not only are we on the same page, there's nothing to really adjust because we've done it all beforehand and we have a point of view with which to jump right in. I don't know how much time it took you, but I will tell you what, as far as what that meant for the preparation and how much more prepared I get to be, it doubled, at least doubled my ability to be all in and show up for you. And the fact that you did it too, put me at ease to go, cool. This is actually going to be a fun dialogue. It's going to be a thoughtful, deep dialogue because we don't have to be figuring some of this other stuff out in the moment.
Absolutely. It's all about engagement, right? You feel so much more engaged if you know that your counterparty on the other side is also invested in your process.
Yeah, it's true. And how much time do you spend like in your day and all of the meetings that you have and all of the deep work that you're doing and the, I'm going to say important regular work too that you're doing? How much of that is, like, in a percentage, do you think it is the preparation?
Oh, so that's what we call pre-work.
The pre-work.
When we think about some of the work that we do on our end in order to quote unquote show up. So let me give an example for interviews.
Yeah.
For prior to someone getting to my stage of an interview, I likely would have watched all his previous interviews. We record them. And we tell the participant that we're going to be recording them with the goal of being congruent across all the interviewees that we are hearing, one. Two, that they're not repeating the same thing. We don't want to hear your origin story again and again. Like, that just sucks for the interviewee. How many times have I said this today in a discussion? And three, we ultimately want to come up and have questions as to something that you might not have hit on in a previous interview for us to better understand. One. So that's some of the pre-work we do. We also try to tell and educate interviewees on who we are. And so might that be a pre-recording of who the interviewer that you're meeting with is, so you don't have to waste that precious 30 minutes phone call on who is the interviewer and what they're trying to understand in that conversation, to who the firm is and how we might describe our own culture and what we do. Might that be how our points of views are from a hybrid work environment perspective is, that being us gathering for offsites all across the US, most recent being in Vegas. Like, how do we show up for each other? And how do we ensure that we have a balanced work relationship? And so those are some of the avenues through which we try to be respectful of people's time, that they're not repeating themselves, but also making the most of their time. In the same way that we are screening to understand if someone's a good fit for us as a firm, we're also doing the same for them. They need to make a decision and if they're going to be a good fit with us as.
And so it sounds like the majority of the work being done is pre-work so that the real work is the important work. Is that a fair reflection?
Especially for interviews. You give a 5-minute preamble, or he gives a 5-minute preamble. You have 20 minutes left to decide if you guys are mutually a good fit.
I've built Red Direction on this concept of discerning the important work and then doing only the important work, because that's where miracles happen. And in our conversations, not only before we started recording today, not only by our email dialogue in between, but when we first talked, that came through as something that's also important to you, because it's easy to be like everybody else. It's easy to just do the work. the important work or the right work is going to be very different company to company, person to person, based off of all of these things. So I'm curious from your experience and your perspective, and whether you use your company or whether you use an experience of yourself, I would want to know, like your rap video, what are the things that show up, right? That that you're doing that does set apart being different, or illustrates the importance of it, maybe.
I guess the difference between the urgent and the important, that's always that tyranny of the former. And one of the things that we really want for our personnel that we recruit is that whenever people hear an individual comes from our firm, that they're like, that's a cool, they are different, they think different, and they just have a different point of view. And so parts of what we do is trying to elevate the platform through which these individuals are playing from. Primarily because if you have a higher vantage point, you are playing from a place of strength versus a place of weakness. And so one of the things that we did, to the point of the rap video, is if anyone searches our asset class, that being tax receivable agreements, like we're not even on page 1 right now. And one of the problems that we had is that Google utilizes a concept called domain authority. It means that they prize people who have consistently posted for very long durations. But what we do, law firms obviously are the ones that have, quote unquote, done this for the longest. And so they rise to the top, even though their content isn't the most relevant. And so for what we're trying to do and try to break onto page 1, our search engine optimization firm, consulting firm, basically told us the way you do this is to get on page 1 is for the next 3 to 5 years, you are going to publish a article once a month, and we'll hopefully get you on page 1. We're like, understood? That's a very long duration for us to be a long time for us to be raising the platform of our personnel to put them in a position to win. And so they were like, how does one short circuit that?
But can you? That was going to be my question. Can you, and do you want to?
He said you could, by going viral. And we were like, how does one go viral? And they were like, oh, that's your choice. You figure that out. And we're like, randomly, 2 investment firms, Blackstone as well as Apollo, have music videos out there. One discovering Taylor Swift and the other saying no new toys. And we thought those were hilarious. They saw, while some might view them as cringy, they ultimately received a lot of engagement. And the people who were in those videos got a lot of credit for putting themselves out there. We're like, fine. We're willing to try anything. It'll take us a couple of hours as a team to prepare. But if it gets us to number 1 on SEO, and it gives and raises a platform through which our people are playing from a place of strength versus weakness, we'll do it. And so we put ourselves out there filming with a videographer. We utilized ChatGPT to write the rap. We then had a different AI tool called Suno prepare the lyrics, and we went at it. And so it's been a labor of love. I would say it was a lot of fun. It was incredibly uncomfortable, but that's part of life. Putting yourselves in a position to grow in that context.
Share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. I thrive on your feedback and engagement. You're listening to the Bold Business Podcast, and I'm your host, Jess Dewell. This is your program for strategizing long-term success while diving deep into what the right work is for your business right now.
Focused on growth? Listen to more programs like this which support the challenges and opportunities you are working with right now. Come on! Search Bold Business Podcast for the key terms at reddirection.com or your preferred podcast listening app.
I may be putting words in your mouth. I want you to expand on what I say, either yes or no, right or wrong, whatever it is. And that is, in your experience, when we follow everybody else's rules, we may never be found the way we want to be.
And there are 2 advantages that I'll go with. One, that all rules are meant to be broken. And not to say that we're playing in the gray or anything like that. But you've seen revolutionary businesses bust on the rules of their time. So taking, for example, Uber. Uber basically broke the back of the taxi monopoly. And as a result, we have an outgrowth of many different avenues through which we experience life today, because Uber was not only able to change the way we move and go from point A to point B, it also resulted in things such as Uber Eats, among others, for which we are able to get food relatively quickly. Uber Eats likely wasn't possible without the former having this appropriate network effects in order to get sufficient scale for the opportunity set. And so that's one example for many of the individuals and stakeholders that you have on your podcast who listen in. They're fundamentally looking to change a business, a way things are done. And oftentimes you might need to have a point of view that is different, that might ultimately upset the incumbent. And so that's a risk that you're going to have to run for some of these underlying businesses. One. Two.
Hold on to that thought, because I want to stay here with the number one, because what I'm hearing is, and you're not saying the word disruption, and I don't think you're implying it. So I wanted, everybody's thinking, hey, he might be talking about disruption. He may be, but I wanted to point out that breaking one rule is not changing an industry. Okay, keep going. Number two.
Everyone thought for the longest time that where we are in life is basically where we're going to be for future generations. It really takes an individual who believes that we can be so much more, almost in a sci-fi point of view, like what Elon has been able to do for one, Tesla, and two, SpaceX. I think those have been phenomenal examples of someone who has had a distortion field and wants to pull humanity into his realm, basically seeing the future and creating a path through which you are able to get there. And so, but to do that, he broke a lot of rules as we understood it. Might that be re-engineering the battery packs that go into a Tesla, all the way to understanding that not just NASA can put a rocket, or the Russians can put a rocket into space. A commercial operation can do it too. And now we can, as a result, we have satellites in the sky that have launched for a significantly cheaper price than where we would have been if it had entirely been government funded. Then almost like the 2-hour marathon. The moment someone breaks it, everyone breaks it. Now we have so many other opportunities to get to space. Blue Origin, among others. There are so many. Once Elon got through, everyone broke through. So he raised the standard and our expectations for who we can be as humanity and what we can achieve in a manner that most don't never fully appreciate it.
Let's talk about the importance or the need or the desire or the allure of being first. Do we have to be? Or is it okay to wait and be number two and be just as impactful, powerful, different? And
so I think there are two things that I would describe. There is first to market, and then there is first to scale. Two different concepts. I would think of first to market as being Lyft. Lyft was in the market before Uber was. But today, Uber's competitive advantage is they have so much more scale than Lyft. And inevitably, there is a question mark as to Lyft's viability in the public markets today relative, given Uber's tri-headed ability to win. Might that be the Uber Eats business on top of their mobility business and whatnot? And that's, I think, for a market where scale ultimately provides an advantage to the incumbent. Being first to market may also mean you might be the first to get shot, whereby you make so many mistakes. Some of them, they don't kill you. No mistake in and of itself kills you. But if you get killed, you get hit too many times, you get worn down and might not be able to survive the journey. And it's not the fastest. Nobody who runs a marathon has the fastest 100-yard time. It's the one who does it the most consistently over a prolonged duration. And so if I think about the war as it pertains to Uber and Lyft was first to market, but Uber knew that the game was network densities, and they were very focused on achieving that across their core markets. And so they were the first to scale. There were hundreds of copycats that just never got to orbit.
Uh-huh.
All to say, being first to market is valuable. Is it the most valuable in a many winners market? Potentially. In a market of one?
Yes, there are people out there, and you have named some, that have a distortion field around them. And there was something that you said about them. Once they break through, many can follow. And I think that happens at the biggest scale with the most pronounced people out there. But I also think that can happen on a much smaller scale also with small businesses. And it could be as local as community, or it could just be small businesses serving a great market all over the place. And I think so I'm curious about your thoughts on that, because I love talking about these big thoughts, and then I like to bring it back down. So I'm very curious how you see that when you bring it back down to the mid-market, because I think it's an interesting opportunity for people who are looking at their business today and trying to decide what to do. What does growth actually mean? Is it just more revenue? Is it a new way to do things? Is it the next way to scale or break through? And can we use what somebody else in a whole different area did?
Look, every big business started as a small business. McDonald's, Whole Foods, pick your poison. Like the brands that we all know and love today, they were all at some point in their history a small business. Ultimately, what they were able to do was to reduce the variance of their outcomes in order to create repeatability and ultimate scalability. For many small businesses, they struggle because the care that you put into your business, Jess, is the same care that I do. And in the same way that many small business owners, where it's their life's work, it's their all. How do they translate that and replicate that consistently such that the way that you show up for your customer ultimately results in the same thing for across multiple stores and multiple customers? Because you only have the one great limitation in life is you only have 24 hours in the day. That's not scalable. How do you create 100 Jesses that enable you to create that same customer experience where they're like, we can't imagine going anywhere else but to work with Jess? That's ultimately how, as I think about some of the brands, might that be the Four Seasons, the Amon, like everything that they do, they want to ensure that you experience them in the same way every time you go to the resort. From the way they greet you, from the moment you enter to the way you leave, to when you emerge from a pool, them bringing you not only a drink, but a new towel, to can we get you slippers? That's a way that every single resort, that Amon or Four Seasons resort you go to, you feel the same way. And as a result, that's an incredibly, they've been able to repeat it, creating scalability and people willing to pay premium prices for that experience. And that's something that each small business owner has to figure out for themselves. How do I reduce the variance to create repeatability? And what is my magic sauce that I should maintain over anything else?
Now we're talking about priorities, and we're actually going back to a value set and belief systems that came back at the very beginning of our conversation. And have you found over time with your clients and within the work you're doing within your organization, a way to bring that forward, right? There's growing pains and there's all of this other wonderful awesomeness that comes with being in business. Slow growth, fast growth, whatever, what growth actually means in our organization. But I do think that there's an element of, it's easy to forget what we started. It's easy to forget not bringing those things, that belief set, what our priorities actually are, into every decision. Have you cracked that nut at all?
I don't think it's a nut that you're ever going to crack in earnest. The way I might describe it is we've been in business for almost 8 years now. And the challenges that we got in year one are very different than what we got in year 8. That's a function of the fact that we've gotten more resources and we're stewards of more capital, among others. But the part that makes it an incredible business is with the people element of it, right? Whereby people are the best part of business. Correspondingly, they are also the most challenging part of the business because we each are different individuals, and trying to create standards in order to decrease the amount of variance is something that we are constantly trying to figure out. Like if we think about training programs, might that be a General Electric financial management program or an investment banking program that people might emerge out of college for? Their goal there is to take people who might come from a state school, an Ivy League, a HBCU, a community college, and put them into a single program whereby, yes, we will in time celebrate your differences, but we want to put you all on the same level playing field, that we all understand what standards are expected of us, but also we want you to see excellence because you can never unsee excellence. Once you've seen what great looks like, going back to seeing good gives you almost an allergic reaction.
I don't know about how it shows up for you, but I'm like, ew.
That's an allergic reaction.
With the limited amounts of day, how do you spend your day?
We talked a little bit about our identities. I identify as a husband, as a father to my dog, a son to my parents. And in the course of having 168 hours in a week, I dedicate every week. We have a family call for an hour on Sunday nights. And I endeavor to try to call my parents one other time during the course of the week. I try to make time for the wife. I'm not very great at that, but that is a priority. Making sure that if I think about having the appropriate amount of sleep among others, like time boxing what is in my life I want to show up for, to the point about the obituary. I want to show up for people in my life that I care about. And in the course of having 168 hours in a week, I'm very focused on understanding who am I going to remember when I pass. The world isn't going to remember me a day after I pass. They're like, he was great. What's next? For the 40 or so individuals that I prize in my life, making sure that if my parents call, I immediately pick up. Because there's going to be a day where I'm like, I wish they would call, but that's not going to be able to, I'm never going to be able to get that back. Or same for my friends. Like, how do we do that appropriately in a manner that is congruent relative to our professional aspirations, as well as our desire to continue growing? Because not everyone's going to go with us on that growing journey. Some people want to be where they are, and they would say, you've changed. And the answer is, that's true. I have changed. Some people that I knew and held dearly in my life in high school and in college, like, they never changed. And I don't fault them for it. They never had that aspiration. I did. And so I changed. And as a result of that, I grew. And we are still friends. That doesn't mean that I think any less of them. We just are different people.
And so we're talking about relationships like in our greater life. There's an element of that we can actually bring into the business world too, which is the autonomous person and our individual visions and goals and values and what's important to us. And then as well as what we do as a leadership team, what we do as a management team, so that we're setting the stage. Because regardless, this is the top down. Even if we're one person today, the first time we bring on a VA, if we're that small, the first time we take our first key hire after we were like at employee 8, or our new actual department or acquisition when we might be in stage the year 5 or 6 of our business, or even later than that, doesn't matter. Each one of those things means we've got different people in the mix. And so how have you seen success of taking all of this awesome difference and the strengths of each of the differences and still being able to work together and grow together around a common goal, and then be able to engage with people in a way that supports the differences, but also makes the unit, the organization, different as well.
To be clear, I think that if I thought about what you just articulated, there are standards that we are very firm on. So we always tell people, we have expectations for you. In the same way, you should have expectations for us. One of the expectations that we have as a firm is that we are very much a get shit done. Like, you say you're going to get something done on this day, you're going to get it done, because others are waiting for you for your deliverable, which ultimately feeds into their deliverables. And any delays on your end, they may be explainable, but ultimately you have ownership of that. And that's something that is going to cause a delay on the other end. 1, 2, that we prize discourse. Like, we want individuals who don't just argue a single point of view. You have your point of view, and we very much respect that. But I want you, if you feel strongly about a topic, I want you to be able to argue the other side of the coin. What is that? Let's say there was a discourse as to the upcoming presidential election. Sure, you might be what some call a Biden bro or a Trump fan. I want you to argue the other side of the coin. Can you understand the other side of the country's point of view and why they may feel that way, and then why they may feel that way about that candidate, so that you can better understand and have empathy with the other point of view? And so discourse, I think many are very uncomfortable having, but that's a prized value that we have as a firm, such that whenever we have a firm-wide discussion about that we're working on, I'm the very last one to go. The most junior goes first, because that creates an avenue that people can build on. It can continually grow in that context.
I'm your host, Jess Dewell, and we're getting down to business on the Bold Business Podcast. This is where we're tackling the challenges that matter most to you with actionable and achievable advice to get real results that lead to your success. Don't forget, press that bell icon so you never miss a program. And it's time to subscribe as well.
You're listening to the Bold Business Podcast, hosted by Jess Dewell, a nationally recognized strategic growth consultant. She works with business owners and executives to integrate just 2 elements that guide business through the ups and downs of growth. Number 1, know what work is necessary. Number 2, do all the work possible. Schedule a complimentary consultation to find out more at reddirection.com.
Andy, I will tell you, few companies will take the time as a group to have uncomfortable conversations where the effort isn't to persuade or change, but it is just seeking a deeper understanding so that more people can be met in conversation. More people can be served. More people can be directed to their next best step, regardless of the fit with us. And that's internally, as are we growing? Is everybody doing what they said they were going to do to the principles that you were stating for your organization earlier? And other companies will have similar and different ones. And then when they're not, the company may be outgrowing some of its people. The people may be outgrowing the company. There may be a point where that path must shift. And if it can't be able to be figured out together, it means it's time to part ways and see what happens. And that is a natural course of everything. And if we're not having the conversations, we tend to be blindsided by them. We tend to be like, where did that come from? Or who ever knew? And then we get defensive. And that's where all of the more negative things that we see in business and business relationships, that messiness can reside in, for lack of a better word, to allergies, right? There's this reaction. And then now I'm thinking, I think I'm hungry because I keep thinking about food, and I'm changing some of my things around food. I'm like, I don't want an overripe banana, right? Rotten tomatoes, rotten apples, or ones that have already gone a little too ripe and started to shift into that rot and breakdown phase will impact everyone around them. And that's true in business too. And that we think about that in terms of, are they aligned with our culture? But I also think are we aligned in our vision? And I don't think we're talking about that enough either.
I'm sure before you met your husband, you met many wonderful guys along the way. And they just weren't going to be Mr. Dewell. They were wonderful, but they were looking for one thing and you were looking for another at that point. In the same way that prior to meeting my now wife, I went on 122 first dates in a year before I met her. There were many potential Mrs. Lees. They were phenomenal individuals here in New York City, but I wasn't ready to settle down with that. I was very focused on my business. And then I met my wife, and literally we got basically we're there together since. And so that's not to say that they were bad people. That's not like we were just in different seasons of life where we just wanted different. And in a different time in my life, they may have been the right person. And so like I tell people on my team, like we are going at a certain speed. For those who are in a Ferrari, we probably aren't the right fit. For those who are walking, we probably also aren't the right fit. For a season of your life where you are jogging, trying to finish a marathon, we probably are congruent with you, but we're not going to curse you out if you decide to leave us. We want to wish you the best. We want our alums to do incredibly well. We want to celebrate your success. We want you to be on this journey for as long as you also want to be on this journey, but no harm, no foul. We get there just seasons of life that you are with us and not with us. And we would love for you to come back should it be congruent someday that your skill set is what we need.
What was the most stressful, I'm going to ask you to reflect now. What was the most stressful business experience you had somewhere along your career until now? And so what was it? How did you handle it? And knowing what you know today, being the expanded, more learned person from having more experience, how would you have done anything differently?
In 2017, I had left my old firm. They had given us capital, but also allowed me to recruit one of my best friends to serve as our first investment professional. And I hadn't taken it lightly. We had just raised our first fund, and what would be a perceived competitor made a public announcement that they wanted to enter our space. Obviously, they had supposed to raise north of $1 billion to hit the opportunity stuff. And I was like, what am I doing? I literally brought a knife to a gunfight. Like, they are going to launch against them. Like, I need to go back to my old firm and beg them to literally take my colleague and myself back, because like we're going to get blown out of the water. 8 years since, they haven't done this competitor hasn't done anything in the space while we continue to build our market leadership. But for a moment of time there, I was like, what am I doing?
How long did it take you to realize you actually are doing?
One day at a time. I just remember having this conversation with myself in the shower where I was like, we are getting blown out of the water. Do I have it in me to keep going? And I think I actually had the prayer, Lord, take this cup from me. And that was something that I reflected very heavily on. But I think it was one step at a time. They're not going to win every battle. No one has 100% take rate. And so can we find enough avenues through which we can successfully navigate this complexity? We obviously know that they are focused on the larger transactions. We'll focus on the smaller transactions and focus on being the best version of what we can be at that point of time to the customers that we do serve. And so it's been a journey in that regard, but not giving up and putting one step in front of the other, continually for being focused on being the best version of what we can be for our customers was a very big focus of ours.
Getting through it and now looking back, what was the strength that allowed you to navigate?
Sheer stupidity. I was too dumb to know what I didn't know. I was too arrogant to go back with my head between my legs to ask for my job and his job back. I was too proud to say that I had failed. So out of sheer all the failings as it pertains to being human, I experienced, and I was like, I cannot fail. And so that literally was probably the drive that got us to where we are today. But I would not say there are so many things where I look back and I just cringe. I'm like, whoa, how did I do that? Or why did I do that?
Do you think if you had embraced the failures instead of pride and arrogance and the things that you were mentioning showing up, do you think if you had embraced those failures, you would be where you are faster or different? Or are you like, I only can be here because I was who I was then?
Very much the latter. Those failures color us for better or worse. We still wear those scars. And it's been something that I always tell the team, it's fine to make mistakes. Our job is to fail forward. We just cannot repeat the same mistake. Like, I'm fine with us making new mistakes. Our job is to mitigate the number of mistakes that we make. We aren't afraid to make new mistakes. Obviously, we mitigate.
What are two of your weaknesses?
Oftentimes, I'm too hyper-rational as it pertains to investment decisions that we make. So what's an investment decision in an operating business? Should I hire someone? Is this the right individual? And many people have a very different hiring philosophy. They hire for the job. So they're looking for someone with a very high floor that has done the job before, has demonstrated the class to do the job. That's why I describe it as high floor. I'm always looking for someone with a high ceiling, that they may not have done the job before. They may not know how to do the job, but do they have the potential, courage, capacity, power to do the job and then some? Because if I'm just recruiting for someone to do the job, that person's only going to be there for 2 years. And then if they don't have the ceiling to go up, they might not be. And that's like very challenging. I think I reflect incredibly hard on each underlying investment that we're making. Like, where do you prioritize and spend your time? That's an investment. Like, should you spend your time engaging in a discussion, coaching someone up? Or should you spend your time with a customer, building that relationship? That's both there's no right or wrong. There are pros and cons with each is fundamentally an investment that you are expressing via your calendar. And so there is an element that, to some extent, it's too hyper-rational, is how I think about the quote-unquote investment that we make. And that can be very jarring for some, because they might want coaching, but I'm like, I can coach you right now, or I have the option right now with someone who's right in front of me that I can potentially increase stickiness and lock-in value from a sales perspective. And another weakness that I have is that as I think about what we do, like, how do I raise the people that I am around to be better than, and coach them to be better than who they are today? How do I unlock their potential? And that has some level of paralysis on my end from an analytics perspective. Like, how do I put you in a position to win that is congruent relative to where we are as a team? Because for many people, they would say, you'll get the right people in time. Don't worry about it. You might cycle through a couple, but don't worry about it. I think for me, that's a big challenge. And it's when I say I'm all in, I do mean I'm all in. I'm not saying that with that as an exception, there's a but along the way. I truly do want you to be the person that we want to help scale us in the future, not just in your current role, but in your future role. And some people say that's too high of an expectation, and it's just something that you shouldn't aspire for. So that is some might describe a pure weakness of mine.
Sure. How about two strengths?
I view myself to be an introvert. I think many would say that I'm actually a relatively good conversationalist and have an extroverted personality, even though I view it as being not necessarily the strongest point of what we do or what I do, but being able to have thoughtful conversations. I think where my best friends tell me where I show up in their life is, they're like, if we want to have a drink and have a good time, you'll be there. Great. But that's not where you really show up in our lives. It's when we're in our worst moments. That's when you show up as that, flying to wherever someone is when someone in their life passes, or being there in their darkest moment for one reason or another. Like, that's where they say you truly show up as a one. Two, having a good sense as to where someone is getting stuck. I think that many people, because they're so stuck in the muck of their daily life, they fail to see the forest from the trees. And in that regard, no one is thinking about Jess Dewell's enterprise. But they look at me and they say, you're constantly trying to raise us up to be better than who we thought we were, to know that we didn't even know we had skill sets that we had. And because being Asian American, there is the notion of what we call the bamboo ceiling. Have you ever heard of that concept by chance? So the bamboo ceiling is a concept similar to the glass ceiling for women, whereby Asian Americans, they make up the majority of many technical skills, that be engineering, investment banking, among others, but they never get the top job. And people ask the question, why is that? And it's fundamentally primarily because that as a culture, we prize technical skills. It allowed us to lift ourselves from the bottom of the social economic pyramid further up the ladder to provide for full lines. But the part that it failed to do is create commercial sense in the culture, whereby every top job, when it's all said and done, is a sales job. There's no hiding that. You have to sell your husband on marrying you, your son on eating vegetables, clients on working with you, people on partnering with you. Those are all avenues through which you ultimately have to sell them to get to where you are today. Asian Americans fundamentally fail at that because they look down on that skill set. To sell was viewed to be a skill that was below them versus a technical skill. And that was something that people never learned.
There's a place for integration into some of the work that I do, and this is going to expand even my viewpoint. So this is my biggest takeaway from our conversation today.
The bamboo ceiling?
Yeah, I get to learn something new, and one of the ways that you put it was, I see where the problem is, and this is just the way that it is, and boy, isn't it hard to get through. I think it's awesome because the way it was presented is, at least there's a path forward. That's awesome. Not hard. It may be hard. It requires a lot of change of thinking. It requires meeting people where they're at. It requires recognizing maybe the views that made it will stay there, but that doesn't mean it has to be the way.
There's no one way in life. There's no right or wrong.
What makes it bold? What makes it bold to do that inner work and outer work to be a founder who is different and wants to make an impact?
Absolutely. I think it goes back to the start of our conversation, actually. In order to make a difference, you fundamentally need to be different. If you're too close to the standard, you're never going to make a change for the betterment of society or humanity or the businesses that you work in. You need to understand from an insider's point of view what those standards are. And then from there, for you to really change it, is to figure out what rules can and cannot be bent. But obviously, you can bend the rules of physics. That's not what Elon Musk did. But there are so many things that he conceptualized that NASA had never even thought of. Reusable rockets. They were like, what? We thought you literally had to clear orbit. But he was like, why can't we just land it in the Pacific Ocean? That changed the total mindset. So people believe they operate within rules. But which rules were there as a figment of their imagination? Or what rules were there to be broken to begin with?
Every single time I have a conversation, I take away something that I want to share with 25 people. I know when you're listening to this podcast, you're also listening for that and will have something that you want to share. In the comments, I would like for you to engage with us. What is that thing that you want to tell 25 people from this program? Here's why it's important. It's important because, yeah, there are going to be how-tos. Yes, there are going to be steps. Yes, you're going to be like, oh, I wish I wrote that down. I wish I wasn't doing this and I could actually take action on that right now. But guess what? You're not. So engage right now, because that one thing you want to share with others will be the thing that you can figure out how to incorporate in your business, in your workflow, in your style tomorrow.
Wow! Jess hosts the Bold Business Podcast to provide insights for building a resilient, profitable business by deeply understanding your growth strategy, ensuring market relevance and your company's future. It is bold to deeply understand your growth strategy with your host, Jess Dewell. Get more information about how to drive solutions and reset your growth mindset at reddirection.com. Thank you for joining us, and special thanks to our post-production team at The Scott Treatment.